Good morning, everybody. Welcome. Nice to see our studio audience reappearing. We're First Center for Religious Science here in New York City. Today I have a talk for you that I found. It's one of my favorites from one of my teachers, Dr. Bill T, as he was called, was a person that inspired many ministers who went out in the field and are still practicing. I need to say hello to the ever-expanding list of people on social media. We have, I believe, over 70 or 80 members signed up this year, and hundreds of people are watching us, so it's really quite amazing. We might have 50 people on the call today, but by the time the week is over, there'll be 150. So when I got here in 2017, we had about, I don't know, somewhere between 15 and 30 people that we would see somewhat regularly. And the center wasn't being supported very well financially, and we kind of knew which way the wind was blowing. We knew that we're moving towards what they say, a center without walls. We knew that the centers were becoming more and more virtual, though none of us ever predicted that we would have this thing called COVID that would come up. And that even pushed us further to developing what we call a hybrid audience, which is what we have today. And we're very fortunate because our center and our investments has allowed us to do this programming for everybody for the past 3 or 4 years. It's not based upon the contributions of the members because it's really only a handful of people that contribute. But it is based upon our good stewardship of our investments and the fact that we're able to put our building in good shape. This has been a 2-year process, and I was happy to report from our accountant this week that we have almost as much money as we started with when I got here, and that's going for 4 years without any income. So how do you do that? Keep a building open in New York, renovate it, and go through all we do day by day and pay salaries with minimal contributions from the membership. So it's quite an amazing thing. Our property taxes were reduced $65,000. I now live on the 3rd floor, and for a year I was sleeping on the couch. So it was quite a thing, but we've done amazing things here with all your help and support. I want to talk about Dr. Bill today because he was really my inspiration. Dr. Bill ran a very successful center in Fort Lauderdale that he, I won't say inherited, but it was Norman Lundy. Norman Lundy, like Raymond Charles Barker, was sent to that part of the world to teach religious science. So Dr. Lundy was a famed speaker. They say he had the best set of pipes in the business, and meaning that he could speak. He was really great. And Dr. Bill was the second person who came into Fort Lauderdale, and he turned that particular work, that science of mind work, into one of the best in the country. And he was quite famous, and he was my inspiration. I had encountered Louise just before, a few years before, and it was good because I don't think I would have been ready for Dr. Bill. Dr. Bill was a religious scientist like none that I've ever known, because he wasn't the holy type. He was more about the law. Everything was about the law, the presence, and the way it works. So I was thinking, let me find something of his that represents him the best. And he has some that are humorous and some that are pure science of mind. And I found one called Caretakers, which Jimmy dug up from the archives, and I spent some time with it. I wish I had more time to spend with it, but my notes this morning I wanted to share because I thought it's fairly deep. It's the type of talk you might have to listen to twice. Anyway, about him. He was always forward thinking. He knew that churches were evolving. That was back in 1990. And he was very well acquainted with the works of Joseph Campbell, who many of you know, who wrote the book, The Power of the Myth. And you might remember there's a series with Bill Morris and Joseph Campbell. And I remember Campbell in particular. He had a statement that informed me as a young budding minister. He said, you got to keep pointing people to the mystery. Okay, that's who they are and what they are, and and how it works. It wasn't about building churches and all of that. It's really because Ernest Holmes himself is talking about there's an inner ability and inner experience that we all can have. So it's not about the churches. Sometimes people go to churches and think they're going to find God in the church. God is not found in this building. It could be, in a sense. But God is always with you. And this is the thing. That's why these churches, these spiritual centers throughout the world are having problems right now, because they used to have, you think it's all in the scriptures, and everything's there, and you need them. You need them for the sacrament of penance. You need them for the sacrament of matrimony. You need them to die, the sacrament of the holy, what's that called? I can't think. The last rites, you need them for baptism, because they would have you think you were born in sin. And so when you come here, a place like this, we don't have any of that to offer you. When I first got involved in this in Miami, I remember a friend of mine saying, well, we need a good hook. We need a good hook, meaning to get them in, and I don't know if we need some kind of rituals. And we're joking around and saying, well, maybe we should have snakes or do something, have some secret, handshake or do some crazy thing that would make you all think that we got something, here that's unique to us. But the fact of the matter is we don't have any of that. So what do we have? So we have this thing. Ernest Holmes called it, and I was a young man, I heard him call it the thing itself, and I blessed myself, good Catholic boy that I was, because that was blasphemy. Oh my, I thought, lightning would strike when I referred to this creative intelligence as this thing. Because I objectified God as being some type of guy above who was really watching me with great interest, everything I was doing and I wasn't doing. And I kind of figured if I don't get my act together and repent, that I was bound for someplace eternally hot. And so I didn't like the sounds of all that at the time. So we come back to Dr. Bill. And here I was, a young person like many of you, you were raised in your different religions, and you come into a Science of Mind center, and I was judging people. They had food drives and, raise all the money for the poor and bring in your food. And I saw about a few dented cans on the table, and I thought, these people are so wealthy. They've got beautiful cars in this beautiful place, and nobody's bringing any food for the poor. And so, I'm judging everything. And, then you go towards that end of that food drive, and I don't know what the figure was if they raised $9,000 or $19,000 for the poor. It's just that people didn't find it necessary to bring in their dented cans. They just wrote checks. So I was learning, there's a whole thing that was going on in this Science of Mind Center. But even that wonderful center, after time, this is many years later, that was 1990 when it was thriving, they had a $7 million building, and people weren't supporting it, and it dissolved and it went into nothing, and which was very sad for me and many others. And eventually, whatever proceeds they had, they were able to sell the land and the building, move into a smaller center. And now they're trying to, they're introducing an agape form of service, and they're steering away a little bit from the teaching because they're trying to do whatever they can to stay alive. So we as spiritual centers really have to be willing to change and evolve. And I know here we're considering affiliating with different groups that allow us to bring in different expressions of truth. Thing about me and Judith and people like us, we're always going to be interested primarily in the science of mind itself, because we know that that's the most direct thing, right? But we're open to listening to different opinions, and we want to be, and we especially want to listen to a generation that's probably half my age, because we're wanting the center to be available to people half my age. And so otherwise we're all preaching to ourselves and we're not bringing anybody we're not bringing in the next generation. I remember at a ministers' conference about a year or so ago, I don't know if there were 100 ministers there, but they say, how many of you are over 60? Would you stand up? The room stood up. And the next question is, how many of you are, I don't know if they said under 40 or something like 40. It's like 7 people stood up. So that was a problem. It is a problem. But maybe it isn't a problem, because it's a problem because my generation will be gone in not too long. I mean, hopefully not too soon. But anyway, the people that, would be the next generation don't exist. I mean, they exist in the world, but they don't exist as ministers. But maybe that's not a problem, because the centers, the ones I'm aware of, are folding up. They're disappearing because people aren't attending. Even today in the heart of New York City, we have 5, 6 people, 7 people. We're thrilled to death to see you. And we've had some classes lately, and people love coming and they love seeing people, but then they realize, my God, I'm going to see them better on Zoom. So that poses a problem, especially when you have a building that's worth $7 or $8 million and you're trying to pay the electricity and pay the salaries. So these are all the challenges we deal with here week after week. And when I was talking to our accountant and our investment person, he said, you know something, you're within $200,000 of where you were when you started. He said, now that's something 5 years later. And I said, but oh my God, they think we're doing everything, and they think this and they think that. He said, they can think what they want, but you have about the same amount of money you did when you started. So it's really easy for people who aren't here day by day doing the work to have all kinds of opinions. And it's sad, because we work really, very hard to keep the programming going. So Dr. Bill knew this was all going to happen, but I can't think he knew about COVID. Nobody knew about COVID. He knew that these churches need to change, these centers. And however we wind up choosing to help people, our job would always be on the side of pointing people to the mystery of life. And that mystery is the thing we always talk about, and it's that there is one life and we share in it. What does that mean? That one life is in you, operating through you as you. See, that's the best kept secret of all time. That presence is in you, operating through you, and your life reflects what operates through you. And so we come into Ernest Holmes, who says there's power in the universe. You've heard it before 1,000 times. There's power in the universe greater than you, of which you are a part. And the next part is really important, and you can use that power. You are using the power, but most people are unaware that they're using the power. Most people are out there and they're talking about people, places, and things, and this will sound judgmental, they're playing very small. By that I mean they're in a world where they're acting and reacting to everything, and they don't really understand that they themselves are cause to their own experience. So they could turn their experience around if they really understood that they have power, but most people don't understand that they have that kind of power. That's why a place like us exists. But this is a tough sell, because when you come into religious science, we're going to teach you, first of all, that you are caused your own experience. And what that means is you are responsible for your life. Now, I liked it better when I could go down to the Sacred Heart Church and get on my knees and say, please, God, take this away. I'm sorry, please take it away. That worked better for me in those days, because there was no responsibility hardly on me to do anything. So you come into this teaching, and nobody's going to save you or bless you or remove your sins, give you the sacrament of penance or any of that stuff. But we're going to give you something really wonderful if you're up for the challenge, which is you can transform your life with this teaching. So I learned a lot from Dr. Bill. He was very progressive. Again, he wasn't the holy roller type at all. He was always very direct, speaking about this thing, the law. And he would talk about the presence, he would talk about spirit, but he'd be always talking about the law. So I was searching around for this lesson. Somewhere in the back of my mind, it knew it existed. And I'll give credit that Jimmy found it. And the lesson centers around the idea there is this something. Think about it. You have this something that's where? Yes, right. In you. It's there, right? And it responds to us according to law. Anyway, that day he entitled the lesson Caretakers. And I didn't know what he meant by that initially, because he said that's what we really are. And I'll explain as we go on. And he said, I know that we're at a wonderful time in our evolution on Earth in terms of each of us having recognized how necessary it is to become a caretaker of the planet. Think about that. That was 1990. We could all be saying that right now, right? 1990, 2023, 2022. We're at a wonderful time in our evolution on Earth in terms of each of us having recognized how necessary it is to be a caretaker of the planet. You know, he said, we have a responsibility here. Wherever I've traveled, and I can, as Greg, I can say that too, I see that people are getting more and more now. They're getting that, you know, my God. When I was in South America a few years ago, I'm noticing everybody's like coming out of stores with no plastic bags. You know, they're carrying stuff. I don't know how they're carrying stuff. They weren't using plastic bags. Please, you know, they're getting it better than we do in America, some places in the world. So he said, we have a responsibility here. And wherever I travel, he said, as I see people are getting it more and more, every place, every country. And it's probably because we as a people on the earth have reached a critical stage in the evolution of our planet. We're at a place where we're seeing ourselves going to other planets, knowing that there may be a need to go to other planets in some point in time. And it seems far-fetched, but it always starts with an idea. See, I'm fascinated listening to Elon Musk and people like that are talking about livable, sustainable places to live in Mars. It's not that we're all planning to move to Mars right now, but we know that we need to be exploring some of these places for humanity's future. Part of our evolution right now is that we must become much more involved in the caretaking of the earth. Or it's not going to be around here to sustain life for our kids or our children's children. You know, it won't be there for them. There won't be anything left to sustain life unless we come together as people. So that's the message from 1990, and I think it's equally timeless. I think it is appropriate for today, maybe more so. I think one of the most important things that you can do at this point in terms of your own ongoing evolution is to start reading and listening to some of the material that's available about, excuse me, I'm not saying that right. It's time to start reading and listening to some of the material that's available about what you can do to become a caretaker of the planet. I started to look up things for you last night, but I ran out of time, but I'll do it, or you can do it yourself. So we want to start seeing what we can do to be part of the solution and to understand that every one of us has a role to play. So that was his introduction, but this isn't the primary focus of where he goes with this lesson or where I want to go with you this morning. Because the caretaking he's talking about in this lesson is the caretaking of you, the caretaking of your soul. I want to dwell more on the consciousness of learning how to be a caretaker of our souls. I think if you do that, the secondary aspect of the planetary caretaking will be a natural evolution. It's natural evolution. And conversely, you can always use the planetary evolution as a method to come back to the nurturing of your soul. Whatever direction you start in isn't so important. The most profoundly important task that you have on this planet of expression, in this life, is to become a caretaker of your soul. I did have some slides, but maybe they're not working. The primary responsibility you have here is to become a caretaker of your soul. Let's define soul first of all. Anybody want to try to do that? It's not easy to define. Let's define soul first of all. In metaphysics, as most of you know, we have a wide variety of terms that we use at different times that have different meanings. So it's a challenge to describe some of these things. More often than not, when we use the term soul, we're referring to a universal subjective or a universal subconscious mind. This is interpreted as law. Most of you do understand law. What I'm thinking in the subjective, what's in the subjective plays out where? In the relative. It plays out, okay? So when we think of soul in metaphysics, with all its different terms and meanings, more often than not, when we use the term, we're referring to the subjective, all that stuff that's within us or within the universal subconscious mind. And this is always interpreted, once again, as law. And we also have that thing individualized in us. So there's the subjective in us. It's the area of our subconscious mind that is the law of our own life. Now, we talk endlessly about belief systems here and the agreements that we have that go on. Well, that stuff gets played out all the time, right? And as you know, stated very simply in the words of what he described as the master teacher, who was, I'm sure, Jesus, it's done unto you as you believe. That's the law. It's done unto you as you believe. That is subjective. That is soul. But that's only one aspect of soul. I would like to try to define it for you, keeping in mind that language is limiting. And the best we can do is approximate a symbology of this rather abstract idea. So I want you to think of the beginning, if you can. When they say in the beginning there was what? God. So if you want to think in terms of the beginning, and some of you might be thinking the Big Bang, some of you might be thinking different things, right? But however you might think of it, I want you to think of it. And when you're thinking of that, you're contemplating the divine. In the beginning of any created event or process, because there never was a time, I believe, that the world ever began, it simply evolved from one state of consciousness or materiality into another. So I don't care how far back you go, when you think of the beginning, you think it started wherever you're thinking. And Dr. Bill is saying it simply evolved even then, from one state of consciousness or materiality into another. But I think it always was. He doesn't think there was a beginning, right? I think it always was. And if it wasn't, it's really secondary anyhow, because it began with a Big Bang. He said, if that's so, something had to blow it up. Think about it. They want to say, okay, it was all there, it began with a Big Bang. He says, okay, well then something had to blow it up. Well, so that's something that precedes it. So there had to be something there to blow up. So what does that mean, if it was a Big Bang? It means it was transformed. So stay with me if you can. Out of whatever there was, that, for lack of better words, we call God, we also call the Tao, we also call it the Buddha essence, we also call it in some parts of the world Allah. Whatever there was, and that, for lack of better words, we call it all these different names. None of them are really adequate. Whatever it was, we call it by all these different names. We never really have an adequate name, and we try to make it anthropomorphic, meaning we all try to make it some type of God above. Usually it's some type of guy for some reason. And out of whatever that was, whatever was there, that was there before what is now, okay? It was there before. And I was smiling as I was saying these things last night because it's kind of like tongue twister, so I'll say it again for you. I want to say that again because I know it can be confusing. Try to get this. Whatever it is right now, whatever it is, it was. It always was. I'll say it again. Whatever it is, you think gazillion years ago, whatever it is, Whatever it is, it was, and always was. What it was before it is was. You get that? It's kind of fun. Whatever it is, it was, and always was. And what it was before what it is presently was. So I'll try to simplify it now. For every effect, there must be a what? It's just the way it works. For every effect, there must be a cause. Certainly in the world of created events, created things, every effect has a cause. So we're talking now about first cause. Whatever it was and always was before it became whatever it is. Whatever it is had a root. Now, what is it? Well, it's you and I in this room, and Reverend Judith and Janetta, and all these nice people. I think Celia's back there. Whatever it is, it's you and I and the building, Jimmy, and all the people on the broadcast that are listening today and who will be listening all through this week. Whatever it is, it's all of us. It's the building, it's the street here on West 84th Street. It's wherever you are. And it's the oceans, and it's the planets, and it's the minerals, and it's the stars, and it's the suns, and it's everything. It is all of that. And whatever it is, in other words, whatever those things are, they had a beginning somewhere in the transformational process. And the beginning is what has always been. Try to take that in. Some aspect of the indefinable, unknowable, unthinkable, unsayable thing that we call God is in all of us. The mystery, again, which Bill Campbell talked about, and Dr. Bill, and many others, always go back to, we speak the sacred word, sacred because whatever word we choose to use is a symbol, and it's terribly limited in our ability to define. We're trying to put a word that's going to encapsulate all of that. And yet we know that's what it is. It created us. It created the world. It created the planets. It created everything that was, because that's all there ever was it, right? It created Jesus. It created Muhammad. It created Buddha. It created Lao Tzu. It created Confucius. It created Mencius. It created Spinoza, it created Schopenhauer, it created Greg Harte. Did you like the way I put myself in that? Bill did that in his, so I thought I might as well. And he smiled, he laughed. He said, there are those of you who might think that I represent one of its lesser creations. But that's okay, because he said, then it's done to you as you believe. So if you're tripping about me, he said, so it's going to be done unto me as according to what I believe. In the same way, whatever stuff you might be conjuring up right now is your creations. So let's take a look back at the moment of conception. We'll talk about our own personal arrival, you know. Now, we might have arrived before, but it's a time of birth, right? In terms of where you began to evolve, there's a seed, very basic biology. There's a seed and there's an egg. And the one nurtures, the other implants. One takes what was implanted and nourishes it and grows it. The other has within the potential of all that it is, and in juxtaposition, in concert with each other, you grew. And you grew with some incredible cosmic wisdom that's unimaginable, because you're an aspect of this thing, right? You grew with some incredible cosmic wisdom that's been going on, allegedly, for millions and millions of years. What you are is so unbelievably intelligent. What you are is the intelligence that caused that growth to take place. That conception, that aliveness, and that energy, that unfolding of whatever was, which always was, is now you. So all the wisdom of the universe that aliveness, that energy, that unfolding of whatever was way back when you're contemplating, which always was, is now you. See, my God, you think if you have low opinions of yourself, my God, what do you have? You're like part of the divine. You're amazing, and yet we sit around thinking, what, I don't have this and I don't have that. Now, my question is, when it was what it was, and then became what it is, did what it was, that divine thing, did what it was get filtered out in the becoming of what it is? I think not. What I think happened, that it became what it is, but still retained its essence of what it was. And this is so great as we think about it, right? It became what it is, and it still retained in each of us its essence of what it was. So this is great. Our problem is that you and I see ourselves as personalities. We're focused on personalities, and Jonetta's here and she's this, and Greg's here and he's that, and we do this tripping about what we see and stuff, and we forget that namaste part of it, right? And well, here we are. Some good, some bad, some warm, some cold, some smiley, some sad, some rich, some poor, some attractive, some not attractive. We have all these what? Judgments about the fantastic spiritual beings that are around us in this fantastic world. We judge it all the time. See, we think that's what we are. You look at your brother, you're judging him or her because of what they're doing, and we trip. We're tripping about everything, and we're forgetting. My God, you're awake, and it's a short trip. You're awake for a short trip, and everybody's around is a divine and spiritual being, and you're living in a spiritual universe, and we forget all that. But what that is, when people are doing that with one another, is their way of communicating with each other what their perceptions are about one another through many filters and faulty thinking of what we are. And what we really are in truth, I got to say this in the deepest sense, what we are in truth is some kind of a point of what always was. You're spiritual beings. That's the truth of who you are. So what always was became something. In your case, something incredible. Each and every person in this call, it became something. You were born, and you were born with every, it's pure potential, aspects of God, individualizations of God, something incredible and unique in all the world. So whatever it was maintained. Its wasness, or however you want to say it, became something when you came into the world. What it became was you, and me, and everything else. You're seeing it in everything. You may not be aware that you're seeing it in everything, but you're seeing it in every smile, you're seeing it in every child, you're seeing it in every, looking at technicians, you're seeing it in the street. It's everywhere. And so much more. It became you and me and all of us, and so much more than, say, John or Mary or Ted or Harry. It became more than Buddha. It became more than Muhammad. It became more than Jesus or whoever. Much more than the personality or the name, which means the nature of. Much more than that was the thing that is using the personality and naming and expressing. And then in this great isness that we are, we look and we find that we are one with the law. It's done unto you as you believe. It's done unto me as I believe. What I decide I am, I am. What you decide you are, you are. But you may be a whole lot more than what you've ever suspected you are. That's one of the reasons you come here, because we're going to tell you, you may be a whole lot more than what you think you are. And I'm sure that's true. And there's a part of you that knows that you're one with the one, and you're here to evolve and grow and express more. And you might say, well, I'm a sales lady, or I'm a salesman, I'm 36 years old. You might say a lot of things to describe yourself. You know how people do. You might continue, I'm 35 years old, I'm a salesperson, I'm married, I have 2 children, I earn a living. Or you might say, well, I'm 33 years old, and I'm a female, and I'm single or I'm married and I have one child and I'm an attorney or I'm a housewife. I'm also a mother, and then someone else will say I'm a father and I'm a breadwinner. I don't know if they use that term anymore, but you might say I'm the gardener. You might say you are many, many things. So we have a wide variety of identifications, especially now in the 2020s. There's all kinds of new definitions. But all these identifications are not really what we are at all. Those are descriptions of what we do and occupations and things like that. There is a part of you, an I am. That's what's important. That kind of stuff. Now the key is, can you think about what you are? Can you think about the I am? Can you, in your own words, in your own way, I am what? I am. It's really important to start thinking along those lines. What are you? This is where it gets interesting. He says, when you ask yourself, what are you? He's going to say, you are that which was. You are that original thing. That's what you really are. That's the answer you're going for. I am one with the one. So what are you? You are that which was and became you. And what was did not get filtered out. Even though you might have lived without it or thought you lived without it, it's never been filtered out. It's still there. That's the basic story of the prodigal child, which I talk about all the time. What are you? You are that which was, always was, and that which became you, and what was didn't and will never get filtered out. Because if it got filtered out, you'd be dead. You wouldn't be here. You have become an aspect of what always was. You have become a point of awareness within the mind of it. Now, if you study the history of evolution of the human condition, one of the things you're going to find out is that each succeeding generation pushes itself into higher realms of understanding. It's a natural cycle. Sometimes it goes up and down a little bit, one step forward or 3 steps forward, a step backward. But the progression on the mean is never straight up. It's always on a graph up and down. But it's always moving forward. Ultimately and always, it's unfolding and it's moving towards a higher degree of consciousness. Interestingly enough, one of the lowest degrees of consciousness ever recorded in our history of the world was when the organized churches were in charge of the world. That was called the Dark Ages. They shut down all the scientists. You couldn't question anything. Everything's found in the written books. Everything in the book is sacred. And nothing alive in you was considered sacred. It was considered blasphemy. The awareness of the living God is not found in the churches. It's not found in the scriptures, the holy books. That was called the Dark Ages. I don't think any of us ever want to go back to the Dark Ages or anything that it represented. So much for the illumined wisdom of what was called the Mother Church or churches. What we're looking for in New Thought is always about pointing people to the mystery that they have it. You have it. You might not know you have it, but you have it. And that they're one with it. And that everything is within. Now, it is the nurturing and the caretaking of that identity that is your responsibility. That's what we're talking about today. That kind of caretaking. It's the nurturing and caretaking of this spiritual identity, of this isness that you are. The isness of this is in you, operating through you. And some part of that always what? Was. It's never been away from you. This is what enriches your life. In fact, it is in truth, it's the only thing that enriches your life. Because all this other stuff we acquire gives us momentary what? Happiness and thrills and stuff like that. You might get a big raise or new job, or I might do a good talk and I'll feel really good on a Sunday, and for a moment I think, oh Greg, it's pretty wonderful. Right? But in the end, Or you might play a beautiful song or play some type of beautiful music, or you might look at your children, you're proud of them and their achievements, or the fact that you even have children is miraculous in your mind. And you might have the joy of going on a vacation someplace special or wherever. But any and all of these things are momentary reflections, that we love, but they fade. And they don't really nourish us as much as they recreate our energy. Because, that's what recreation is. It means to recreate. So that we can get on with what the real business of our life is. So what do you suppose the real business of our life is? It's going to come right back to, That's okay. The real business of our life, and that's defined for you. Our real business is developing, maintaining, and realizing there's a connection that we can understand that is about the isness, understanding that we are that isness, and we are about that thing that always was. And then once we have that understanding, we come into teachings like this to nourish it and become a caretaker of it. You'll hear me week by week talking about becoming the guardian at the gate. When you know that you have this connection with what was and now what is, we want to nourish that and become its caretaker and keep practicing the awareness, or I say practicing the presence. We first become its caretaker in the recognition that it's there, that you have a soul. That's what it is. It's the spark of life. It's that point of identity of life that's eternal. It's that energy that has this incredible intelligence within it, and you all share in it. That is all that you are. It's all the wisdom and potential and the possibility that has ever existed. That's what you are. And I know then we start to feel like, oh my God, I don't measure up to any of that. Because we do. We start thinking of ourselves as something less. And I'll be the first to admit and say, when I look at the way I live my life at different points in times, I look at some of the things that I might have been involved with. It's certainly not a reflection of an inner state of awareness of my soul. Like I was checked out on all that, it looks like. If anything, as I reflect back, it may be ignorance. The act of ignoring our souls, ignoring my soul, which oftentimes progresses from ignorance to ignorant actions and reactions. But when I'm aware, when you're aware, and when you're aware of this incredible presence that's much more than your body, it's what made your body, that's much more than your thought. It is the thinker behind your thoughts. When you think that way, when you're aware of this incredible presence, the thinker behind your thoughts, it is the intuition that occasionally you become aware of and you express. It expresses through you. If you want to use a more esoteric terminology, it is your higher self when you get plugged in and aware of it. It's what the Eastern theologians have always called Brahman. Brahman's an interesting story if you ever want to read up on it. Brahman is this all-comprehensive, conscient God, and the story of all the Vedantic literature, and the Bhagavad Gita, and the Upanishads, and the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali, all of the great Eastern theologies. So we think the story of Jesus is unique in the world, but the story of Jesus really has happened in history several times. But let's go back to Brahman. Brahman, which was another name for what we try to describe, right? Brahman became Atman. And Atman is the human. So you got the father-son thing, right? And Atman is human. God became man. The absolute became the relative. So they're trying to describe what we try to describe too. And we are all points, each and every one of us are points of relativity to the absolute that always was. What it was is being. It is being. It is being now what it was through each of us and everyone else. So I have no problem with that teaching either, because they're saying the same thing we're saying. It's very difficult to feel sorry for yourself when you realize that you have a soul, when you realize that you are a soul, When you get that deeply, that I am a soul, and when you really bring that in, and I'm alive and awake in it, right? It pulls you to an entire different place. You don't really want to talk about any of the things people are talking about because you're living in this centered awareness that, I have a soul. And when you get to that place deeply, it just takes you a different place. That is part of this incredible gift of consciousness and life when you wake up. That when you wake up, that is all there is. When you bring that in deeply into your awareness, into your being, it's very hard to act like a victim anymore. It's very hard to be angry for very long. It's very hard to be too depressed and too fearful and too ill. When you know, and you know that the power and the presence of God is the reality of all that you are. This is what I call being a caretaker. Okay? You're taking care of that. That's the most central thing for you to be taking care of. It's when Jesus said, I need to be about my Father's business. It's just, okay, you guys can keep tripping and doing what you want to do, but I need to do what? I need to be the caretaker of my own soul, my Father's business. The recognition. The first step in spiritual mind treatment or affirmative prayer is often taught with the word recognition. And the second step is unification. Sometimes those steps are actually interchangeable. They actually go together. The recognition is this. There is one mind, one consciousness, one creative intelligence, one essence, one origin, and in it and through it, and that is God, or you can call it any name you want. And the second step, I am one with that power, I am one with that wisdom and consciousness. I am its essence of expression on this plane of existence. I am its meaning and its methodology of expressing. So that's true for all of us. I'll say it again. And you can say it for yourself. Take it in. You probably want to listen to this talk another time. I am one with that power. I am one with that wisdom and consciousness. I am its essence of expression on this plane of existence. I am its meaning and methodology of expressing. And God and I are, in truth, one. And you might say, God and you and everybody else, in truth, are one. One mind, one earth, one humanity. Scan the globe. One humanity, one mind, one earth, one consciousness. That's the soul. Now, oftentimes in giving ourselves a good affirmative prayer or a spiritual mind treatment, it's not necessary to go any further than doing just what I just said. Do you know when you're courting the presence of God, when you are recognizing the soul within, everything, you're like kind of tripping out. You're there connected with it. It's kind of like, for me, it gets to be almost a blissful place. When you're courting this presence and recognizing the soul within, everything just seems to fall into place. And all that other noise and things that are troubling seems to slip away. And you fall into a place and you know that all is well in the universe. When you are feeling all that love, connecting with all that energy. In fact, one of the primary recognitions in courting this presence is the awareness that all is well with God and with the universe is a universe we refer to as the manifest body of God. All is well with God and the manifest body of God. See, that's a spiritually realized person. You don't get thrown off by all the things that are on the news and all. You're not interested in gossip. It isn't your thing. You're here, you realize, like, look, this is not a dress rehearsal. My life, my goodness. Every day you see people, disappearing. What I mean, they're making transitions. And you're out there dealing with small fights and small things, So when you come into a teaching like this, you become more aware of I'm here to express and live and to understand something. And just because everybody else is doing something, I don't have to be a part of that. I'm not judging them either. It's just you've reached a point of spiritual attainment where this isn't interesting you anymore. You're at a place where you know all is well. And it doesn't mean we ignore illness or sickness or facts or say something that's potentially dangerous in this, you're walking the streets. But all is well and life is moving forward by means of everyone. When we become caretakers of the planet improves. And when we become caretakers of our soul, our lives dramatically improve. When you're becoming the guardian at the gate of your soul, you're not getting involved in what we call the mess. It just isn't your thing. So you come into our teaching, we use a lot of positive terminology. Oftentimes I think, if we didn't use words like God or spirit or mind, see, ministers don't usually get paid much, with the exception of some of the bigger centers in the country, but most of them, and I can attest to this, you work for many, many years, you're just doing it for the love of teaching what you teach. If we weren't using words like God and spirit and some of the words that we all grew up with, some of our more effective teachers would make wonderful motivational speakers, and they'd make a lot more money in businesses, right, than they do in spiritual centers or churches, which are closing from coast to coast. It's interesting to me, the corporations pay hundreds of thousands of dollars over the course of a year to motivate people. They do this to keep them motivated to do the jobs they were hired to do in the first place. But these motivational things, they're all wonderful. I remember Napoleon Hill and Think and Grow Rich and Dale Carnegie, all of those books, I read them all, it became part of me. But these motivational things have a tendency to wear off. That's why they keep having to come back, they'll last a weekend so people will go to weekend seminars and they'll get all pumped up, or you'll go different places for workshops. But that pumping up begins to level off and wear down a few months later. You're pretty much back to where you started, unless you take it into a deeper level. And this is what I'm really trying to do today, is to let you know you can bring this to a deeper level. Because the lasting impact of a deeper sense of awareness in these seminars is not there. See, I used to go to every seminar there was. But I don't say there's a trick. But for it to really create change, you have to internalize it. Now, you might get the message in any of these places. You can tune into Oprah Super Soul, you can tune into Tony Robbins, you can tune into lots of things and get good messages, right? But to internalize it and keep working with it, that's the work that we do here. The message requires regular reinforcement in order for it to become subjective. It needs to supersede some of that old belief system and things that we have going on within us. It needs to be taken in to become subjective, so it becomes the law of your life. I often say our classes are a great insurance policy. People who show up every Thursday and Sunday, they might think they're hearing the same thing, but they're really not. They're being reminded of the truth of who they are, the perfection of who they are. I hear people say, well, I don't need to go to church anymore to be a good person or worship. And you don't. People don't come to church to worship. We don't come here to be good people. Your worth and value is established, long before you ever step foot in a church. We don't save anyone in the churches. And you might think, I don't need to come to a church or a center to embody these principles either. Right again, you don't need to. So why do I have to come to church is the question. And I'm reminded of a fellow talking to the minister, and the minister was sitting, asking that question, and the minister was sitting in front of a fireplace, a coal fire, where coals were burning. It was a cold winter night, and they were discussing the need for being involved in any type of church. And this fellow kept on saying, well, I don't need that, and I don't need to do that. And the minister reached over with a poker to the fireplace, and he separated the coals over to one corner, except one he left. And it was burning brightly for about 4 or 5 minutes, and then it burned out. And he said, it's not what you get here in this center on this call that nurtures your soul. What you get here on this call, now hundreds of people watching, is the awareness of the need to do the work necessary on yourself to give yourself the attention to become more of a caretaker. When you are a caretaker of your inner being through prayer, through contemplation, meditation, journaling, when you become a caretaker of your own inner being, when you stop long enough to see yourself as a soul in the process of becoming, rather than a human being with a very short lifetime here, things take on a different perspective. When you stop long enough to see yourself as a soul that's in the process of becoming, everything shifts. You're going right into the Father's business. You know, I don't mean a man, but into the higher realm. So that's a suggestion. Slow down. Consider prayer, contemplation, meditation, because when you stop long enough, when you take that pause to see yourself as a soul that's in the process of becoming, again, rather than a human being with a very short time span, things will take on a different perspective. You'll realize, my God, this is not a dress rehearsal. You know, my goodness, I'm not, don't talk about age too much, but, you know, I know I'm not 18 anymore, right? And so when you wake up to that, you know, things are radically different because most of the world are missing out on the best moments. Buddha said, life is largely a game of winning and losing fancy toys. And I suspect that's probably true for most of us. We've had many things and they're gone, and we might have grieved over some of the comings and goings. Life is a game of winning and losing fancy toys. When we get away from the toy concept and we look at reality for what it is, we come to conclusions. What it is that we are in a stage of evolution, every one of us. We are in a stage of growth. We are in a state of change. And some of us are playing our lives very, very small. Do you really think you have time for the petty stuff? I mean, do you want to be about just that? Really? So again, we are in a stage of evolution. We're in a stage of growth. We're in a stage of change. And we are pushing ourselves into higher realms of being. And you're alive now for how many more years? Why don't you just jump on and hitch your wagon to the stars and commune with life and just be everything you can be? Why not, right? Because it's there. I can tell you, if it's the last day of your life, you'll regret that you haven't. Okay? And as we do this, you and I become caretakers of our souls. When we're aware of the role that we play in the evolutionary spiral of life on this planet and life, in a cosmic sense, evolution is propelled forward by intelligence. Not the other way around. I'll say it again. Intelligence produces evolution. Evolution does not produce intelligence. The intelligence has always been there from the beginning. When you tune in, it will always provide you answers. We call that spirit within, right? Intelligence, when you court it, because it's courting you, produces evolution. That intelligence, once again, has always been there. It's the ability to embody that intelligence that is important. You and I, every one of us on this call, are immaculately intelligent. Immaculately. Because that's what we are. Intelligence isn't something that you get. It is what you are. I'll say it again. Intelligence isn't something that you get. It is what you are. Now, how we've chosen to use it is suspect sometimes. We can really creatively destruct. So intelligence, once again, is not something you get. It is what you are. When you start telling yourself, I am an intelligent point of pure self-conscious awareness within the mind of God, when you begin to feel that, when you begin to feel and you begin to believe it, when you begin to believe that, you will then outpicture it, because it's the law. It's done unto you as you believe. You don't have to do it, right? Your task is to nurture what you are, and then it'll be done unto you. You know, you don't have to reach up. You don't have to, but I would if I could, I wish you all would, right? Your task is to nurture what you are and what may be done unto you. And I don't personally know how that's going to happen for any one individual. I don't know how it's going to happen. All I know is it happens. You show me a person who's on fire with this awareness in life. You show me somebody who's got that kind of passion, and I'll show you a person who has found God within. You can sense it. You show me a person with passion, with energy and enthusiasm, and with dedication, and with a certain gentility, and I'll show you a person who has found God. You show me a person who loves themselves or committed to loving themselves. That's the work we do on Thursday. And when you see somebody who's really involved in their process of clearing out all that stuff and loving themselves, I'll show you a person who loves God. You show me a person who's tough and insisting on the terms of life being what they are able to co-create. And then dealing effectively with life when life isn't, co-creating the way they want. If you show me somebody like that who's really working it, I'll show you a person who's found God. And that doesn't mean in totality, because none of us can find it in totality, because that in itself is an evolution. We're all finding it, we're works in progress, if you will. When we give our attention to anything in our life, it magnifies. That's one of the basic laws of psychology. Whatever you give your attention to magnifies. It expands. Now here's the command phrase. Give it space. Give it space in my mind or your mind. Give it space in my attention, your attention, that I might commune with it and nurture with it. Ernest Holmes said, find me one person who's so relieved of the bondage of self and all the nonsense that they talk about or involved in. Find me one person who's relieved from the bondage of all that racket. And I'll want to hang out with that person and commune with that person. Because when I'm doing that, when I'm giving space in my mind to pay attention to what is, and giving space in my attention to experience this reality, so I might commune with it and nurture my soul, then I might become a caretaker of my own evolution and spend some quiet time with ourselves. He said, let's spend some quiet time in ourselves in a place that is serene to us. You might go to the beach or the woods or nature and quiet, or some quiet space within your own home, and commune and to find God, to listen, to feel its awareness. Source is a sensual thing, a sensual God. We find God within our senses and within our intuition, and we are recreated by that. Then whatever we do in life becomes a celebration of the recognition of what is. That always was. So it's a celebration of the isness of life, what is, that always was, being, is, and still being what was. Now, I hope I've inspired you today or sufficiently confused you that you might listen to the talk a second time on Facebook or YouTube. But if not, tune in next week and we'll try it from another angle, another expression, either Thursday or Sunday. So let's close it